Yeah, my name's Chris. I am a senior engineer at Trustpilot. If you don't know Trustpilot, we're a leading online reviews platform. We're big fans of microservices, big fans of event-driven architectures, and big fans of running all of those on AWS. We are also hiring, so if you're interested in listening to me for 40 minutes doesn't put you off too much, give me a shout later on. So, a while ago, I thought it'd be an interesting challenge, if you like, to create an AWS service without writing any code. And today I'm going to quickly talk about why I thought it would be a good idea and a relevant idea, and then what I tried to build, and then spend some time in the AWS console going through how I built it. So if that sounds okay, we'll get going. So use Lambda to transform, not transport. So this is something that I've heard a lot over the last few months. The implication, I think, being that there's lots and lots of direct integrations around now that rather than automatically reaching for Lambda, we could use those instead. I mean, I've certainly written a lot of code in the past that maybe takes straight off an SQS. Doesn't change anything, posts it straight to an API, puts it in a database, something like that. And if I can get away without writing that code, I mean, to be fair, if you've seen my code, if I can get away without writing any code, that's a good thing. But I kind of wondered if it was possible to maybe go a little bit further and build a service without even bothering the Lambda at all. So I took one of my team's production services and tried to recreate it without writing any code, without using a Lambda. So the service I picked was our B2B free trial service. It offers a 2-week trial of one of our e-commerce features to eligible businesses. So we'll just have a quick look what that looks like. So it's got an API, most things do. We're going to have 3 endpoints. One gets the eligibility for a trial, so when you log into our B2B app, we call this API and see if we can offer you a trial. We want to get a list of trials for the account, so we have another service in Trustpilot that returns the features that you're allowed, and that needs to call into here to get the trial features. And then we need to create one. If we're going to offer you one, we're going to create a trial, so there's an endpoint for that. And then we didn't want to start the 2-week countdown as soon as you've created it. We wanted to start that as soon as you've actually started using the feature, which basically means you've put it on your e-commerce site. So when you put something on an e-commerce site, we get a message on an SNS topic. And so basically when we get that, we want to update your trial to started, wait for 14 days, and then stop it. And then any good trial will send some notifications. So we want to send you one when you've started. Congratulations, you've started your trial. And someone at the end, if you want to keep using this feature, give us some cash. I don't write the email copy, but you know what I mean. And then lastly, when to schedule some notifications during the trial. How are you getting on? What's happening? You know, there's 1 day to go, find your credit card, something along those lines. So that was a service that I built. And this is how I started. So we've got some API consumers on the left. We've got an SNS topic on the left. On the right-hand side, we've got an endpoint that we can post to send emails, and everything else needed building. So better get going. So yeah, the API. So we wanted to, built an API gateway REST API. So as I said, we want to get the eligibility. So that's reading from a Dynamo table that's just got a list of accounts in it. I want to post to the trial. That's a different Dynamo table that's a list of trials. So we're going to post to that with the account ID and a state. And then to get the trials for the account. So if we bob into the console, I've created the resources. So we've got the path is account, and then we've got the account ID in the path, and then trials and eligibility. I hope I don't have to say that too many times today. But so I've also created the get methods as well. So we'll have a quick look at those, and then we'll create the post from here. So if we go into the integration request and have a look at that. So normally, probably before I did any of this, I would always have picked Lambda function as my integration type for an API gateway. But this time it's an AWS service, because we're missing out Lambda. That service is DynamoDB. And we want to send an action name. So the action is, if you've used the Dynamo SDK for the CLI, you'll recognize things like query and get item. And so we're using the query action. And then equally, we need to send it some parameters. So again, if you use the SDK, you'll undoubtedly recognize the fact that it's this setup. So we're going to use the trials table, key in on the account ID, and we're using the input params account ID, which is what comes from the path. So that's a request. And then when we get the response back from Dynamo, we need to turn that into a response for our API. So it's another mapping template. So this time, the input, so we'll see there we've got items, which is what Dynamo will return from the query call. And we're just looping over those and creating an account ID, the current state, and the feature, which is held in the database. So that's the get trials. Get eligibility is very similar. I'll just quickly bob into it. So the integration request this time is using get item instead of query, and the get item parameters like that. It's just a table name and a key. And in the integration response this time, so again, it's item. So we're just basically saying is item account ID there? If it is, then we're eligible. If not. So I'll create the post. So if we're going there, we're going to, method type is going to be post. And we don't want a Lambda function, we want an AWS service. We're going to be in EU West 1. And the service, again, is Dynamo. And the method that we're calling the Dynamo API with is post, and then the action name on this occasion. So I'd never used this before, but transact write items lets us do transactional writes with an extra condition expression in there, which was actually very useful for what I tried to do here. So, and then this time we can set the body. So to set a body, we need a model. I've already created a model. The important thing here is the fact that we're only going to allow a property of feature with a feature one inside it. Anything else will get rejected. So we can set that model to that, and then to validate that, we use the method request settings and the request validator, validate body. And that is the method, and then we need to set up the request. So everything else is done except the mapping. So we go down to the mapping templates, and we add one. There we go, and the body's going to look like this. So this time, so we've got the transact items. So we're doing a put to our trials table. This condition says fail if there's already one. If there isn't one there, if there's already one there, fail. And we're going to pass in account ID from the parameters, created is the state, and feature from the body. And then this last bit here is the condition check. So this is saying fail if there isn't a record in the eligibility table. So we're going to try and write, if there's already a record there, we're going to fail. If there isn't a record in the eligibility table, we're going to fail, which is exactly what we need. So if we save that, that's pretty much it. The one thing is that if those Dynamo calls fail, we're going to get 400, and really, it's probably a 409, a conflict, so we'll set up a different response. So to do that, so we've got one response there already as a 200, I'll create the 409. And then set up the response, and again, the default response is using the 200, so we can create another one. And 409 is selected, and we can say, okay, so if our integration returns a 400, we actually want to translate that into a 409. And we'll create that, and that should be it. So we can do some testing. We've got a test tab. So if I use the account ID of test in the eligibility, hopefully, that's cool, that's is eligible true. I'll just put any old crap in there. and this time it's going to be false. Cool. So then we want to do a get for the trials. Hopefully this is going to be empty, because we haven't, unless I was practicing earlier and forgot to remove everything, but no, it's there, so cool. Then we can do a post. So with the post, I'll set the account ID to test. If I leave the body empty, we should get a 400 because we haven't got the invalid yet. That's cool, so the model's not there. If we set that feature 1 we said, and test that, then we're going to get 200 because it's added. And again, if I hit test again, hopefully I'll get 409. So there we go, we get 409 as well. So I reckon that's pretty well tested. I mean, I've hit the test button 5 times, so I'm ready to deploy. So we'll deploy it. And we have our API. So if we have a quick look at the diagram. So we've updated the diagram. We've now got a REST API. It's got 3 endpoints: get trial, get eligibility, create trial. And they're all using direct integrations into Dynamo. So next up, we need a workflow. So as I said, the workflow wants to set the trial to started or in progress. It wants to wait for 14 days, and then it wants to set the trial again in that trials table to be complete. So, I mean, this pretty much sounds like a step function anyway. The actual service that I'm basing this on also is a step function, so there wasn't much point not doing that. So we'll go and create one. So this time, let's close the API off now. So yeah, we're going to create a new step function, create a blank one. And there's integrations for pretty much any AWS service you want down here. I want Dynamo to start with, which is there. And I want to do an update. I want to update the record in that table. There it is. So if we set that to start trial, and then in the same way that I've just been doing with the API gateway, we need to set the API parameters and the same sorts of things. So table name again, key is account ID, update, set the current state to in progress, and then we've got this condition expression again, which says only do it if there already is one. If there isn't, then fail. One thing I do need to do at this point is set the output, or discard the output. So if I don't do this, then the output from the Dynamo call will be passed on to the next state. And I don't want that in this case. I want to use the account ID that I'm passing in. So there we go, we can start the trial, and then we need to wait for 2 weeks. So in here, we can use the wait. But I'm not going to set it to 2 weeks. I actually want to run this today, so I'm going to set it to 120 seconds instead. Much as I'd love to stand here talking to you for 2 weeks, it's probably not the best use of anybody's time, I guess. And then we need to do another update, exactly the same as the other one. Well, except setting it to complete. So, end trial. And again, so the API, the parameters there, almost the same, except we're setting the current state to complete. And again, I'm going to discard the output for later. Okay, so we start the trial, we wait, and we end the trial. There's just a problem in that if we pass in something that doesn't have a trial, that start trial state is going to fail, and the step function is going to fail, and it could be linked to PagerDuty, and it might get me out of bed in the morning. So I don't like that. So we can stop it, but doing that by checking. So again, we're going to add another get. And down here, so this is, so there we go, that's just the get. And this time, we actually want to use the output, so we can add it. So it's going to be dot existing, we'll point to the existing variable. So we've got it, we now need to check it. And so there is a choice, or if then, or a switch, whichever way you want to look at it. But we can pop that in there, and we can add some rules. So First rule we want to add a condition, and we want to say, so .existing.item, which is what Dynamo is going to return from the get item. We want to make sure it's there, so we can check for it being present. Not of type is present. There we go. Check that's true. And that's great. There's probably one thing even worse than getting me out of bed, and that's if we pass a trial ID, an account ID that already has a trial that's complete, we're going to restart it and give them free things. And I quite like working where I am, and if I keep giving free things away, I may not be there for too much longer. So we'll add another condition here that checks for that. So existing item, current state this time. So we set the current state. It's an .s because it's coming from Dynamo. I want to check that it's created. Save that, and then we need, so at the moment, we've got this rule. We need to set that start trial. If that rule passes, we want to start the trial. For the else, we just want to end, which is this default rule here. So to end that, we can add a new state. And there we go. So we get the trial, we check it. If it's in the right state, we start the trial, we wait 2 minutes, and then we end the trial. Otherwise, we fail. It's not going to get me out of bed, and it's probably not going to get me fired. So we're quite happy. So we can create that. And I forgot to configure it. So I'll just give it a name, NCC trial. And so the type, there's a standard and express. Biggest difference, well, there's a billing difference as well, but for this, the biggest difference is that standard can run for a year, and express can run for 5 minutes. So we wanted it to run for 2 weeks, so it's a standard, and we'll give it a roll. So create that. Cool, so now we've got a workflow. So yeah, the diagram's been updated again. We've got that state machine, and it's got direct integrations to Dynamo. The next piece is we get this message in on our SNS topic, and we need to kick off that state machine. So, yeah, we need an SNS topic subscription to execute that workflow. It's not quite that easy though, I'm afraid. So, if we look in our SNS and we create a subscription, so there's no step function on there, of course there isn't. So if we look down, we can't really use a Lambda email. I'm not going to use that or SMS. I mean, I guess I could add another endpoint to the API and call it from that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use SQS. And there's an endpoint here. There's quite a lot of them. Should I pick the right one? That one. Yeah, and I'm going to enable role message delivery. So if anybody here ever remembers to do that first time, tell me please how you do it, because whether I'm using this or IAC, I always forget it. It takes me at least half an hour of wondering why my message body's in the wrong format. The only reason I've remembered today is because I just post it, but I don't need that anymore. And so we also want to add a subscription filter. So on the body. So the API only allows feature 1. So we only need to care if we've published feature 1. And there we go. So we're going to use the account IDs test, which is the one we used testing the API, and the feature is feature 1. Oh no, hang on, that's the wrong thing. There you go, subscription filter. It's going to check the features list, and if feature 1 is in there, then it's going to call. So we'll create that. And so now we've gone to SQS. So what do we do next? Because I'd only ever used SQS triggered by a Lambda or polling with some code. I'd heard of EventBridge Pipes, but I didn't actually know what they did. But there's a handy little hint here telling us how it works. The TLDR is, it's a point-to-point integration, and one of the targets is step functions, so it's a pipe, works for this. So we'll connect that, and we'll give it a name. And before I forget, we'll give it a role as well. And it's EUS, that one. Cool. Yeah, so now we can build it. So the source has already been filled in because it came from SQS. It's that queue, and so we need the target. So our target This is the list of things that can be the target. So it's a step function. It's the one we just created. Fire and forget. We don't need to care about what it returns. And we need to transform for our message body. So if you're like me and forget what an SQS message looks like, you can use this and set up some JSON in here. And then the transformer looks like that. So we're taking body account ID out of the body and just putting it into a variable called account ID. And that's going to transform that. That's going to be fine. So there's a couple of other options on here. So there's enrichment. Adding data to it, we don't want to do that because we only use the account ID. Filtering, so if I could guarantee that everything that got on the SQS had come from the SNS subscription, then I wouldn't need to do this, but you never can. So I'll just quickly, it's the same, yeah, it's checking body features for feature 1. And so that creates the pipe. So that will now take the source of the SQS, filter it, just in case, and execute the step function. And we can test that by publishing a message onto our SQS. And this time, we are using the account ID that I set up in the API gateway. I'm sending the feature 1. So I've published that. That should start our step function off. And we've got an invocation, and it's failed. So if we have a look in there, why has it failed? Error occurred, entered the event. So the step function is expecting account ID as an object. It's actually getting an array. The reason it's getting an array is SQS uses an array of records. And even though the EventBridge pipe, the filtering and the transforming seems to work on the individual record, it still passes the whole array into the target. And so this is failing because we're not expecting an array, so I can quickly change that. And so we use a map, so that loops around a data set and executes everything inside it. And I could drag and drop these, but as long as I get it right, it's quicker to do it by the code. If I get it wrong, it could be 8 hours. But so if I grab all the states, copy all of those, take those and I'll put them inside this states here for the map. That looks okay. We should just have a couple, yeah. A couple of squigglies to get rid of. So we've got get trial. And the end trial needs actually to have the end on it. So we'll get that. Pass that to there. If I format that, I should be okay. On the right-hand side, that looks pretty good. Everything's inside there, so it should execute. So we save that, and this time, when we publish a message, I'm hoping it won't fail, because I knew it was going to fail last time, but this time, if it fails, I could be struggling. And it's running, so quick look at that. So we've got the trial, we've made our choice, we've started the trial, and we're waiting. So we've now added that to the diagram. So we've created a subscription from our SNS topic into an SQS queue, and we've linked that to the state machine via an EventBridge pipe. And that seems to be working fine. So, I mean, we could actually leave it at that. That would satisfy the most things for our trials. But, as I said, good trials have notifications. So, we're going to add some of those. So, we're going to send the notification when we start and when complete. And it's a HTTP call. So, I could put it inside that workflow step function. Didn't, because we wanted to use things, we wanted to experiment with these, change the emails, change the cadence, things like that. And that would mean changing the workflow every time, and we didn't want to do that. So what it's going to do is we're going to modify the workflow to publish events to the event bus when we start and complete. And then we're going to have rules, and those EventBridge rules are going to get the status of the trial from Dynamo, get the user from an API, put it all together, and post it. So where am I? So we're going to edit this again, and we're going to use EventBridge. And we're going to put that there, put started, set the parameters again. And so this time, it's a list of entries, we're only sending one. We're using the account ID, and the detail type is trial started. That's the main things here. So we need to untick wait for callback, because otherwise the state machine will sit there and wait until we get a callback from an external callback, but we're not bothered about that in this. We are firing and forgetting, and output again. Can't forget the output. And I just need to do exactly the same for the completed event. Put complete. So yeah, the only difference is that detail type there is trials complete. Get rid of that. And that's pretty much our step function complete, the workflow. So we'll save that. So we've put those events. We now need to go into EventBridge and add some rules. So there's a complete rule there already, because I'm not going to create two. But if I create the started rule, we'll give it a name, started looks good. The bus is that, so it's a rule with an event pattern, so the fact that we can't do a schedule rule on a custom bus is fine. When we come to do scheduling, we're not actually going to use an event bus rule, so that's good. So we can go on here, and we need to set, down here we need to set the event pattern, and our event pattern is going to match on the detail type. So trial started was the detail type we set. So that's the starting rule, and then we need to select the target. So what we need to do is get something from Dynamo, get something from an API, use the data that we're already sending in, because we're going to send in an email type, an account ID, and put it all together and send it. So earlier I created a pipe without enrichment. This sounds a bit like a pipe with enrichment. So unfortunately, there's no pipe on here, so it's going to have to go to SQS. And it's going to go to that one, and we need to transform. So we transform the input. And so similar to the other thing, I can, if I want, so that's what our event looks like. So we do the transformation, so it's kind of a two-step process in the console. It's different in infrastructure as code. And so I take account ID from the detail, and I'm going to use it here. And so what we're going to pass to the target is the account ID and the email type I've started. And I can just generate the output to make sure I've got that right, and I have. So that's the rule. And so the last piece of this, we need the pipe. So we can create another pipe, and this time it's going to have enrichment on it. So give it a name, email. Again, we'll give it a role, so it doesn't go and create any more in my account. Great. And so we'll build the pipe, and at this time we actually need to select the. So that's our source, email. We're not going to do any filtering, that's fine, but we did, as I said, we did want to enrich. Now, so when I figured I could do enrichment here, what I thought would happen was I'd call a service, whether it's a Dynamo or an API or whatever, take that, and it would sort of put it all together with what I already had in and pass it on to the next step. That's actually not what happens. It completely overwrites and then passes the return from the enrichment onto the target. So you kind of end up with the sort of a highly coupled, whatever it is we're using to do the enrichment, it tends to be coupled to the pipe a bit. There's not many options anyway, so it's a step function that I've already created. It's that one. Just have a very, very quick look. Again, it passes in the the array. So we're going through each one, and we're using this. So we're doing get, that's just that get item. And then we're making an HTTP call to get the users, and then we're using this pass state here to put it all together. And so what we're returning is account ID, email type that we've passed in, and it's coming back, trials that have come from the database, and the user has come from the API. Where was I? I was here, wasn't I? Yeah. And so we're going to need to enrich again, transform again. So we're taking the account ID and the email type out of what's passed in from that rule, and passing that, and then again to the target. So our target is going to be an API. I've already created this, send mail. And I guess the good thing about having this coupled, the step function coupled to this, is that I don't actually have to do any more transformation. So I can create that. And that will send the notifications, which just... So again, we go on to the diagram. So this time, we've changed the state machine. It's put in two events onto the event bus. We've created rules for both of them, started and completed. They put messages onto the SQS, which is linked to the API via the pipe, which also uses a step function with a direct connection to do its enrichment. And so, last but not least, we're going to schedule some notifications. So we want to do them based on when the trial starts. So we're going to use the EventBridge Scheduler, and we are going to add a target using the started rule. We're going to add to the scheduler an email that's going to be sent in 4 days. So this time we need to add another target to our rule. So if I go to the started rule, correct bus, yeah. So start rule, so EventBridge rules can have more than one target. I think it's 5, up to 5. So we can add another one rather than creating a new rule. We can add it. So that's our original one. So we add another target, and it's an AWS service. Now, unless they've changed it between yesterday and today, there isn't a create scheduler, there isn't a scheduler integration in the rules. And in fact, the only thing I know of that has an integration to the scheduler is a step function. So, where's step functions on here? There we go, step function. So I just need to quickly create a little step function. So we'll select there, and I'll remember to configure it this time and set it to NCC trials schedule. And this time it's an express. It's going to run in, not running over 5 minutes anyway. And we'll give it a roll. So it's quick, 2 states in this. Firstly, we're going to take the inputs and format them slightly, transform them a little bit. So that takes the input, puts into schedule, and then it takes the current date time and puts into that date time field. And then finally, we can schedule it. So we create that. So a quick look down these parameters here. So there's a flexible time window option. I've left it off. I could probably have changed it, but it makes no odds for this. We've got group name. So that's the trial group that's set up. The schedule group that's set up. So the name needs to be unique. So I've set that to be account ID, email type, and days. I'm hoping we're never going to send the same email twice to the same person on the same day. And then there's a schedule expression. So you can use cron and things like that, but we're using at, just a specific date time, and it's at the date time. And so we set the target. So the target is the SQS, the email, and the input is the account ID and the email type. So I can create that. And find the rule I was on. Where was I? Edit rule, there we go. So we'll refresh that, and it's the schedule. We'll use an existing role. Same one that I've been using all day. And we do need to do a quick transformation as well. Configure that. I won't bother with the sample. So again, extract the account ID. And so this is going to pass in, to that step function, to pass in the account ID. The email type's going to be update, and the number of days in advance we want to schedule that as 4. So we can create that. We'll confirm that and then update even. So I can now send an event onto that event bus, and we should create a schedule. So if I send that, scheduler, yeah, look at the schedules, and it's created one, nice one. But it's set it for right now, which is when we started the trial, because we didn't have the days on. So we need to make a change to that. However, for the life of me at this point, I thought I failed my challenge. No idea how I can add days. No idea how I can add days here. There's no services to do it. I might be able to create a third-party API and pretend that it already existed and get away, but that felt a bit like cheating. I did actually find a way to do it, but before I take a look at it, could you just read the disclaimer? So, yeah, I did it with a step function. I would say I'm not proud of it, but I'm actually quite proud of it. I'll be more proud of it if it supported leap years, but anyway, I'll just quickly show you it. Oh no, wrong way. It's in this one. That's what it looks like. I mean, yeah, I don't want to say any more than that, except really don't do it. But you can call a state machine a step function from within a step function. So I can call this from here. Call it add days the state. So all we're doing is passing in the state machine, ARN, and then the date time, which is the current date time, and the days that we've passed in from the rule. And we need to do something with the output, obviously, so we're going to transform it first. If I can remember. Can't believe I've forgotten one after all this. Oh, yeah. There we go. So that's going to take the output and put it into something called that. And then we're going to take that and add it into our schedule. So we're going to have schedule.create. And so then we can set this expression to be schedule.create.app.datetime, and that should do that. So that should be that. So we finished the diagram. We've added a new target to the rule. It's a step function. It creates a schedule. It calls a very dodgy step function to do it, but it does that, and then in 4 days' time, it's putting that on the SQS, which already existed. So that is our service. And there's just one thing left to do. Give it a very, very quick test. So now you might notice that this has been in many regions. There is actually one that's a fully working version, but I'm not going to do that straight away. If this goes wrong, I might do. But, so that's the test that we did earlier on. That's finished. That's good. So demo is the new one. So eligibilities come back. So I click start. It's going to post. It seems to have done that. We'll publish to the SNS. And it started. And at this point, we should have a schedule somewhere. Where did I put the schedules? Not the rear, aren't they? So we've created another schedule. This one. And this time it's for Monday, so that's good. And hopefully my Gmail is still fit for public consumption, because there should be an email on there for me. And there is one. And I don't want to go on holiday, thanks aspect. But there we go, there's the email sent as well, so it's notified. So, it's tested. And so just a quick summary of the services that I used. So API Gateway, SNS with a subscription filter, SQS, EventBridge Pipes, EventBridge Bus, EventBridge Rules, EventBridge Scheduler, standard set functions, and express stem functions, and not a single Lambda in there at all. So it just leaves me to pop some links up. So the top link there is CDK, is a GitHub repo with the CDK for this, because I didn't write any code to run the service, but I obviously wrote quite a lot of code to create it. The next one down is the Trustpilot tech blog. There's some pretty interesting articles on there. And the bottom one is my LinkedIn, and there's no pretty interesting articles on there anyway, but feel free to follow anyway. And yeah, so thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day and the evening.
Thank you, Chris. It's definitely a talk that resonates with me as someone from an ops background, so the less code I have to write, the better. So we've got time for a couple of quick questions. So anybody have any from the crowd? Got one over here.
Is there a benefit in practice to doing it this way versus just putting together some lambdas, or is it just something you decided to do as a challenge?
Yeah, as with many things, I think it depends. It depends what you're doing. I think pipes, certainly I've got something there, rather than writing the code to do that. We can just connect it with a pipe. I mean, I'd probably do the filtering and the enrichment and things like that with a lambda rather than the step function, really. But yeah, I think yeah, it depends what you're doing. But yeah, like as I say, the less code I write, the fewer bugs. So generally a good thing.
This might be opening a can of worms, but how did you come up with the add day state machine?
Well, I literally couldn't think of any other way of doing it, and I thought the only thing I can do it with is with this state machine. I started writing it, and it got bigger and bigger. And I actually tried this talk out on my team last Friday and found a bug in it. So I then spent 2 hours on Saturday fixing the bug. But yeah, it was just a bit of a laugh, really.
Can we see what's in those steps?
Oh, if we've got time. So we start off. So we take the date and time, we split it up. We take the date out of it. Removing leading zeros is really difficult. Because there is no way of doing it, you've got to split them up. Anyway, yeah, so really, then we create the date, and then we go over here and we say, okay, if it hasn't all, add day, is it in January, is it in February, is it in March? That's why it doesn't support leap years, because that'd be even worse. But yeah, and that's what it does. It just keeps looping around until it's added all the days.
Brilliant. All right, I think that's it for now. We've got to